to our Zoom interview. Today, I am interviewing literally a guy that I watched at least 20 years ago. And I saw him on a round table interviews. They're talking politics and all kinds of things. And I saw this kid. and so I'm going, man, that guy is really young looking. But when he started talking, it was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I mean, you saw immediately how articulate, how he knew his subject dead on. And it kind of, and everybody there were, up in years. I mean, it wasn't like they were young, but it's amazing. And I've watched his career go. I mean, he's been on every major secular television interviews, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, you name it, and cable outlets all over the country. Always wanted to interview him. Felt that ain't gonna happen. And then this book came out, For God and Country, The Christian Case for Trump. And it is 16 chapters, turn page kind of reading. It is really great. Dr. Ralph Reed, good to have you.
Thanks so much, Herman. Good to be with you.
Wow,
Thanks for having me.
What an honor. Tell me about your wife and family.
Well, I've been married for 33 years to my wife, Joanne. We have 4 children. We have 1 grandchild. They are all grown and graduated and, having jobs and careers. And so we're empty nesters and we're enjoying being grandparents, and we hope for more. And we're really blessed. We've been greatly blessed by the Lord with wonderful children, and we look forward to wonderful grandchildren.
Oh, what an honor to have you. I'm going to read a little about you, so you're just going to have to put up with me, okay? So, this is about you. So Dr. Ralph Reed is the chairman and CEO of Century Strategies, a public relations and public affairs firm. He has worked on 11 presidential campaigns, chaired the Georgia Republican Party, and served on the Evangelical for Trump Coalition. Reed was the founding executive director of the Christian Coalition and founder and served as the chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, a pro-family public policy organization with 2.2 million members. He is the author of, or at least edited also, 7 best-selling books, and his columns have appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, National Review. He has earned a BA from the University of Georgia and a PhD, a real one, a PhD in history from Emory University. He and his wife, Joanne, have 4 children, as he just said, and 1 grandchild, and they reside in Arizona. Wow. Not Arizona, Atlanta. I'm sorry, I said Arizona. I don't know why I said Arizona. Atlanta.
Yes.
I mean, that is.
You threw me for a loop there.
Yeah. I saw your eyes. I saw your eyes change, and I think that's what caught me. But this book is absolutely, I mean, you cover everything. And I'll give it a good commercial because I really mean that. I mean, it's people watching, maybe they have not connected with you, but they will after this book. But I have literally seen you for years and just admired your intellect. There are a few people on the planet that when they get with people and they start talking and answering questions and people start firing in a kind of a frenzy kind of way, that can actually, when they start talking, which is you, just calm the whole bunch down and just make it sane again. But today, with the media we have, it's out of control.
Yeah, it is, Herman. And as you know, I actually have a chapter on fake news and the
Yeah,
death of journalism.
yes,
And I talk about the falsehoods, the lies um, that that have been propagated by the media about President Trump, his family members, the most infamous of which, of course, is the Russia hoax.
yeah,
If I had told you a decade ago or 20 years ago that every major news organization in the United States would publish and cause to be disseminated alleged news stories, most of them, by the way, with unnamed sources,
yeah,
blind quotes, but with a straight face, alleging that the President of the United States was an agent of a hostile foreign power, namely Russia, and that he was allegedly operating almost like a Manchurian candidate in service to Russia because Vladimir Putin, I would argue, I don't think it overstates it to say that he's the dictator at this point
yes.
of Russia, had something on him. Now, so they didn't accuse him of being, some bad guy. They accused him of being an agent of a hostile foreign power. And they not only said that, but the FBI actually conducted an investigation designed to advance that theory. And you can't make it up. But I talk about that in the book, and I wrote this book not so much, Herman, as a defense of Donald Trump, although I do plenty of that and proudly so. I have a
And you
30
paid
page,
for it too, right? Well,
huh?
you've paid for it with some of your people that you've known before you came on board with Donald Trump.
I'd say, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I think anybody who is a true friend, and I mention in the book, I have good friends of many, many years who are never Trumpers,
Yeah.
prominent never Trumpers, and I still consider them to be friends. We stay in touch with each other, but I think unlike most of those people, and I don't want to pick anybody out,
No.
but unlike most
Read the
never
book.
Trumpers, I actually know Donald Trump. I got to know him, you could say coincidentally, serendipitously, providentially. Never had any plan in my life to become friends with Donald Trump. I didn't care for him. I didn't have a high opinion of him. I told him that when I first talked to him. But I got to know.
You were actually in your home, in your study, I believe it was, and you got a call from him, right?
Yeah. He actually called me out of the blue. I'd never met him before in my life. And I had given an interview to a reporter. And they asked me what I thought of Donald Trump running for president. And I said, well, look, if he runs as a pro-lifer, which I had seen him interviewed and he had said he was pro-life. I said, look, if he runs as pro-life and pro-family and a solid social conservative with his name, his celebrity, and his money, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. Now, this is March of 2011.
Is this before the escalator?
This is 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
No, 4 years before the escalator.
And you're talking about a time when he was going to try and then he changed his mind, right?
That is correct. He was looking at running, and this reporter was hearing that he was hiring staff and interviewing to hire staff. And he had called me to ask me what I thought. And I told him, and I meant it. I didn't know Donald Trump, but I thought, look, if you're a billionaire and you're willing to spend, 25, 50, $100 million, and you're pro-life, I don't think you discount that person. And at least if you're not Michael Bloomberg.
Yeah.
But, and within 2 hours, my phone rang.
Wow.
And it was Donald Trump. I hadn't even seen the story yet.
Did you think it was a joke, or did you actually go, I mean, I can imagine
I
somebody
think
getting that call.
I was just, you know, a little surprised and maybe shocked. I mean, I answered the phone and it was a woman and she said, "Is this Ralph Reed?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I have Donald Trump on the line for you." And he came on the phone and he said, "I just wanted to call you personally and thank you for what you said."
Wow.
Because I had said something nice about him.
How does he, I mean, the guy doesn't miss
He doesn't miss a thing.
comment.
I tell another story from when he was running for president. I got a call from the New York Times and I said something nice about him. I didn't take sides in the primary. I had a lot of friends running for president and I was for my friends and he was one of them. But I said something nice about him and I got a call from Corey Lewandowski,
Oh my
who was
goodness.
on the plane with then candidate Trump. And he said, "Hey, I'm sitting here with Donald Trump." And he just asked me to call and say, "Thanks." So no, he doesn't miss a thing. And
Absolutely.
but the more salient point, and this was the point I was going to make, I didn't really write the book as a defense of him.
Yeah.
Although I do defend him.
Well, no, I mean, you can, when you read the book, you can tell, you know, the old term, you're not kissing butt. Okay. You're actually telling it like it is, which is
Sure.
a real nice read.
Yes, that's right. I'm not a sycophant.
Yeah.
I'm not in his employment. But I grew to really like him. I liked him immediately. He's a very, you know, I think I say in the book, you know, the old phrase, he's the kind of guy you'd want to have a beer with. I don't drink, he doesn't drink, but you get the point. He's a fun guy to be around. He
doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink.
No.
I mean, he almost acts like, you know, when people say, "Is that guy a Christian?" Well, he acts like a Christian better than a Christian sometimes.
Yeah, that's not the nature of my relationship with him. So I don't really, I'm not his pastor. I'm not his spiritual advisor. You know, not a priest or a rabbi. That's not the office that I hold. I'm a political strategist. But I am his friend. And as you know, Herman, I have a roughly 30-page appendix in the book.
Yes.
That details all the accomplishments, all the achievements, including on life, on defending the church, on religious freedom, on Israel, on the family.
Yeah.
But the real reason why I wrote the book was to defend Christians.
Yeah.
And to defend the faith community, because 81% of them voted for Donald Trump. And the media and their critics have accused them for their crime was to vote for Donald Trump. And they have accused them of being hypocrites and spiritual frauds. They've accused them of selling out the gospel for access to power. They've accused them of cheapening and selling out their faith. And I know, because I was there, that is false, that none of that is true, that it's a smear and it's a lie. First of all, 2/3 of these folks voted for somebody else in the Republican Party primaries in 2016. He was not their first choice.
Right.
But once he became the nominee, and you had a vacancy on the US Supreme Court that was going to decide which direction that court went, and either he was going to fill it or Hillary Clinton was going to fill it, and she was the first major party candidate ever endorsed in a primary by Planned Parenthood, and she said she'd never appoint anybody to the federal courts that didn't pledge in advance to advance a radical pro-abortion agenda. Then I think, Herman, they not only did the right political thing by voting for Donald Trump, I think they did the right thing morally and ethically, and I think they're going to vote for him in even bigger numbers in November.
Boy, I hope you're dead on. But how do you deal with, I mean, we still have never Trumpers that have got an organization put together and their whole intent to push them to Biden. And I'm going, did I hear that right? Yes, you did. How does that happen?
Well, you know, it's a free country, and there are some people in the party particularly the party prior to Trump coming along. You know, him coming into the party and his supporters coming into the party was a little like, you know, new wine rushing into old wineskins. And the wineskins rattle and they threaten to break. And so it's not surprising. I mean, keep in mind, this guy wasn't just an outsider. He was somebody who'd never held elective office before, never run for elective office, never been involved in the Republican Party in any significant way.
I mean, a billionaire that lived in a gold penthouse.
Right. And had given money to Democrats.
With a jet better than the Air Force One.
Yeah, and had given money to Democrats, had supported Democrats in the past.
Right.
So it's not surprising that there was significant pushback. And I think I have a line in the book where I said that the Republican Party stretched back to before the Civil War, saved the Union, abolished slavery, advanced civil rights, won the Cold War without firing a shot, and produced leaders like Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, and Ronald Reagan.
Are you hearing that, Democrats?
Huh?
I said, are you hearing that, Democrats?
Yeah, and Donald Trump walked into that party and took it over like he was buying a golf resort out of bankruptcy. And of course it was a shock to the system. And as I say, he was not the first choice of the evangelicals in the party. I get that.
Sure,
But
Cruz was the star, wasn't he?
yes, he was. They voted for Cruz, and then others voted for people like Mike Huckabee or Rick Santorum or Marco Rubio. Look, people forget. It was a very strong field. I mean, these were enormously accomplished people. Even
16.
Yeah, I mean, even people who didn't make it to the primaries, like Scott Walker. I mean, this was an outstanding field. But Donald Trump,
When he gave each one of them a tag, their life was over.
and I think that what Trump really did that no one understood, and a lot of people still don't understand, is he promised to be their champion. He promised to fight for them. And he promised, and I quote this in the book, he promised to give the church its voice back. I relate in the book a critical meeting that the president had. He was then the likely, almost certain Republican nominee in June of 2016 in New York City with over 1,000 evangelical leaders. The details of that meeting have never been fully told until this book, because that was a closed meeting, no media present.
Excellent.
And I point out that he said, you have, 40, 50, 60 million people in the evangelical community. Obviously, not all of those are adult eligible voters. The number of voters is closer to about 40 million. But still, total, it's probably 60 million Americans. And he said, you're bigger than all these other groups that have more power and have a bigger voice. And I want you to get your voice back.
Wow.
And,
But see, Ralph, even with that, knowing his lifestyle, knowing about him, you would say he's saying anything in order to curry their votes.
Right.
And like Glenn Beck even admitted, he said, I wasn't buying it.
Right.
Until he actually started producing what he said he would do.
Yeah, and as I recount in the book, that was the, coincidental or providential advantage that I had over others who didn't believe him.
Right.
And I had gotten to know him. I had had numerous private conversations with him about a lot of issues. But
how did you know when you started talking to him, sitting with him, hearing his response to your questions, or what in you said, this guy is for real? Because that's what we always want.
Yeah. Well, you can never be 100% sure, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've helped a lot of people who made a lot of promises to me and said the same things. And then as soon as they got elected and they didn't need me or us anymore, it all turned out, not to be true. But in Trump's case, and I talk about this in the book, his description to me in how he had become pro-life rang true to me.
Give a little excerpt of that real quick.
Yeah, real quick. And he shared this publicly, so I'm not really violating his confidence, but I wouldn't mind if I did, because I think it was not something that he would mind people knowing. He said that there was a woman who had gotten pregnant. It was not a planned pregnancy, and she and her husband were good friends of his. And the husband, in his telling and in her telling, was pressuring her to have an abortion. And she called Donald Trump and she said, what do you think I should do? And he told me, he said, I didn't know what to tell her. I mean, this is a very difficult situation.
Sure.
And ultimately, the woman decided to keep the child. She resisted the pressure from her husband to abort the child. And the president told me, at that time, of course, he was a private citizen. This would have run around 2011 or 12. He said, I watched that child grow up into an amazing adult, talented, gifted, beautiful in every way. And he said, she doesn't know that her mother almost aborted her.
Wow.
He said, she certainly doesn't know that I know that.
Wow.
He said, and it hit me so hard, because I know how close she came to losing her life. And he said, and I thought to myself, how many other stars, how many other amazing people are we robbing ourselves on? So, Herman, I couldn't be 100% sure. There was no way I could be sure. I can't judge a man's heart. Only God can do that. But, I got to know him. And another thing I point out in the book is, I would invite him to come to an event and he would say he was coming. And then afterwards, he decided not to run for president. And when I next saw him, I said, look, I know you're not running, but I hope you'll still come. And he looked at me, Herman, without missing a beat. I'll never forget this. He said, Ralph, I said I'd come and I'll be there. And what he was saying was, my word is good.
The word is good.
When I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Well, fast forward to where you and I are today. It's 2020, and we're 90 days and a few from an election.
Right.
And I think I can say, without fear of correction, that he has kept his word, not just to the faith community, but to the American people. Not once, but hundreds of times. He's literally kept hundreds of promises, from his Supreme Court picks to his other court picks, to his tax cut, to suspending enforcement of the Johnson Amendment, to moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, to
how many times was that?
How many times to building the wall on the southern border. And look, even the things that he was not able to get done, like repealing Obamacare, I was there, okay? I was in the room.
Wow.
It wasn't because of him. It was because when we got to the final vote in the U.S. Senate, John McCain, after promising everybody that he was going to vote to repeal Obamacare, voted no, and we lost by one vote, but the House repealed it. And the Senate was going to repeal it. We had the votes. And let me tell you something else. Again, I was there. I was working on it through Faith and Freedom, my organization. Nobody worked harder than Donald Trump. They gave him a list of 7 wavering senators. And he didn't just call every one of them. He hosted them for dinners at the White House. He would have lunch with them. He would have them to Camp David. I mean, he did everything but adopt their children. Nobody works harder than this guy. God is sovereign, and he can use anyone. And I would argue that whether Donald Trump is perfect or not, and I'm not saying he is, whether Donald Trump has been a sinner in the past, and I'm not saying he hasn't been. He's admitted he has been. The things that he is fighting for and implementing are things that are right and good and advance the common good. And the things that he's resisting are grave moral evils, and therefore he richly deserves our support.
What president have you ever seen that had all of these pastors around him?
Right.
He was being prayed for, and you could tell he wanted that. It wasn't like, I'm going to give you this time, kind of a photo op. He was actually into the praying. I've never
Very
seen
much
that.
so. And not only that, I mean, yes, and I've been privileged to be in the Oval Office or in the Roosevelt Room or elsewhere where we have prayed for the president. And of course, I pray for the president every day, not just when I'm with him. And I pray for presidents that I'm not a supporter of.
Yeah.
But it goes way beyond that, because, look, this is not my first rodeo. You know, I was co-chair of the Reagan Youth Effort.
Even though you look very young, you've been a lot.
I've been around, and you know, George H.W. Bush was a dear friend, and I strongly supported him. I remain good friends with his son, Bush 43, and signed on to that campaign from the beginning, and was part of his political team for 6, 7, 8 years.
Right.
But I'm telling you, the number of faith leaders that he calls and asks for their input, the number of times that he meets with them privately when there are no cameras there, the number of times that they call him and he takes their call or calls them right back. I've never seen anything like it in my career. He has enabled, Herman, and this is what I want to underscore, for your friends, for your viewers, and for your listeners, he has taken the faith community, people who love God, read the Bible, believe it's the Word of God, and love this country, and he has taken them from being the redheaded stepchild of American politics to putting them at the head of the table. And he's shown respect, and I could go through issue after issue where he has listened and acted based on the feedback from that faith community.
Dr. Ralph Reed, what an honor. I want everyone watching, please, any doubts, any questions you've had, anything you did not understand, it's right here. He covers every detail. I read 16 chapters. It is for you. Get your copy today. God bless.